The young lady had everything, a huge inheritance from her parents' will, the title of countess and the countless islands of the Liar family. Their influence extended even to the sea, but now everything is different. She comes to on the shore and calls for Mikuel, hugging him, thinking that all this will soon be lost. In the meantime, he and his brother are heading somewhere. The aristocrats whisper, the title will be returned when Mikuel grows up. Aracel is already over 20. It's time for the ceremony. The first person to give her flowers will be able to claim the earldom. Mikuel calls his sister. She silently hugs him. He asks her not to cry in public, but adds, tears are not shameful. He is still a child. Show weakness and they will be trampled. Now they are alone and no one can be trusted. Mikuel asks, even these people? She replies, they don't care about them. They only want their parents' inheritance. Does that mean they're bad? She doubts whether she should tell the 13-year-old the truth. He answers with a smile, yes, it's better to know and consider them enemies. They leave, and the nobility condemns the luxurious carriage immediately after the funeral. On the way, Mikuel asks where they are going. She mentions the Duchy of Janat. Is this the Duke who owns the sea? Are they going to the sea? She strokes his head. They will see both the sea and the Duke. Knowing how much her brother loved the sea, she could not refuse. She remembers the book that brought her here and cannot believe her fate. Mikuel was born with great magic, but he never got to show it. Liar's parents fell into eternal sleep after a misfortune. The relatives stole all the property without even knowing the children. Hearing her brother's dream of the sea, she collected the last of her money, but they were stolen and they would have frozen to death. Just like in the book, the same death would have awaited her, but she will choose her own destiny even if she has to sell herself at a higher price. Mikuel asks if the Duke invited them. She notes his impeccable etiquette and replies, no, but everything will be fine. They are not going to the castle. Mikuel doubts, and she remembers Duke Kael von Janat. The Duke of the Sea hides his face and is soon to be forced into marriage with the Empress. He doesn't trust anyone and hates interference in his life, so her offer might interest him. Mikuel suddenly sees the sea. She is sure that the deal will help his secret and he will not refuse. December 991, a month after the death of the Duke's parents. Now he probably stands by the sea, preserving the memory of them. And indeed, he was alone among the waves, she knew. The brother is worried, but she asks him to be careful. It's deep there. A man's voice asks who she is. This beach is his property. He did not invite her. She bows, Your Highness, Duke Janat. He realizes the target wasn't the beach, but himself. She introduces herself as Arcel Delier, and he calls his brother Mikuel. The Duke watches silently. Having sent the servant away, he asks why the Count's daughter is seeking a secret meeting. She came to make a deal. He might want Liar Island. And marriage is not for love. He clarifies whether he is talking about Liar's domain. Hearing her name, he recognizes the recent heiress, offers condolences. Both recently lost their parents. She knows that his mother's relatives are putting pressure on him to marry. Some want to snatch the place of the Duke of the Sea. Others try to seduce or control him. She says it straight out. He wants a bride on his terms, the one who understands the secret and remains silent. Is that a flaw? The waters of Liar are vital to him. House Janat is known as the home of pirates. Their income from piracy is several times higher than the legal one. There are rumors of ships carrying treasures, but the waters of Liar blocked their path and caused losses. By day, he's a guardian of the coast. By night, he's a pirate. He needs the waters of Liar. She understands. Anyone who knows his secret risks their head. And yet, he cautiously offers a deal. He says with a tremor, she will give him the water area. In exchange, marriage, without love on either side. She just needs a shield for her brother. Before Mikuel graduated from the academy. Even after the divorce, the water may not be returned. He remarks that their finances aren't so bad for studying. She agrees. Then why did they come? She recalls the greedy glances of the nobility. She needs to protect her brother and give him a chance. Become a great magician and escape eternal sleep. He needs the Liar's Sea, they need his protection. A perfect deal. This is a loveless marriage. She doesn't pretend to be the mistress. Whether he is a spouse or a guardian, the conditions will not change. He unexpectedly agrees. She is amazed. Kaylee smiles. He won't let such praise slip away. The details will be discussed later, and they say goodbye. She takes her brother by the hand. He admits that he is afraid of the Duke. She is also afraid. But there is no choice. We must endure together. Will they cope? The brother is suddenly surprised. The carriage has disappeared. How can they get back? Everything is like in the book, but she takes out the hidden money. He suggests finding another carriage. Now it's ready. The sound of hooves is heard. She covers Mikuel. The carriage rushes straight towards them and stops. The maid Rosetta, the eldest of the Janat household, comes out. The Duke ordered them to be taken care of. She thanks him. They are not being taken home, but to Janat's mansion. Rosetta escorts the lady to the guest quarters. He asks if she is tired after the journey. In the living room, the Duke meets them dressed differently. She thanks him for the carriage, thinking that they will be sent to Allay. He replies, since they are getting married, why does she need to go there? What's wrong with rumors? Being his bride is an honor. Will gossip change her decision? He reminds her. She knows his secret, but is afraid of little things. What if he orders the execution of all who gossip? Isn't Janat getting married for her power? To crush those who humiliated them. Rumors won't harm the Duke's bride. Before moving into the book, she had an older sister. For her sake, she gave up university and went to work. The sister, throwing herself on the embrasure, grew up too early, and just as early left her alone in this world. The girl involuntarily wonders if her older sister felt the same way, standing at her parents' funeral and clenching her fists in helplessness. The moment comes to mind of her hugging her brother tightly and swearing that she would protect him at any cost. And the boy then, without hesitation, promised in response that he would also become her shield and would not allow the enemies to get close. The other aristocrats watched them with cold gazes, and the young man responded in kind, hard, almost threatening. At that moment, he already realized he was surrounded by enemies. Everyone, that is, except his sister. A week had passed since they had stayed at the Janat family's country house, and now an unexpected guest had arrived. Now the young lady looks at the luxurious carriage and wonders who it belongs to. The local aristocrats have no relations with the Janat family. The boy notices her thoughtfulness and asks what's wrong. The girl replies that a guest has arrived and suggests they go see it together. Mikuel frowns and asks who this man is and if he poses a danger. Then he quietly adds that he shouldn't be disposed of. The main character is stunned by what he is even talking about and realizes that he is still too young for such thoughts. She gently points out that being too smart is also a problem. There are things and people in the world that are best avoided, otherwise it could end in failure. The young lady notices that both he and the man who arrived do not look like ordinary noblemen, and involuntarily wonders who he is. At this moment, the head maid turns to Madame Arcel de Liard and informs her that His Highness the Duke has arrived. He ordered Mr. Mikuel de Liard to come with her. The girl, surprised, asks if Mikuel really needs to go too. She understands that the Duke has little to talk about with Mikuel, except perhaps the academy. Coming closer, the girl hears how the man with a slight grin begins to talk about the young man's future. He notes that since his fiancé's brother is going to enter the academy, it must be a place no lower than the Tamila Academy. The main character asks again if he is talking about the Tamila Academy, and realizes that this is the very elite academy where only the most noble nobles are accepted and where talents are revealed even in those who consider themselves untalented. Moreover, Tamisa is famous for its mage training program, and rumor has it that its graduates easily make a name for themselves in the empire. Whenever she thinks of Michel, her heart aches with the greedy desire to give him the best. But she calmly replies that another place will do. The man asks curiously if she doesn't like Tamila. The blonde confidently replies that this academy is the best one there is. However, considering how many connections will have to be made to enroll Mikuel this semester, and the amount of money that will be spent on tuition, it would be too expensive for Janat. But the man only clarified whether this meant she didn't want to be in Janat's debt. The young lady honestly confirms this, and the brunette, smiling, asks if she has heard the rumors. The girl is perplexed as to what rumors they are talking about. About a cruel bandit or a sea devil? There are so many of them, it's hard to tell. Kale calmly states that she is obliged to accept what he gives, and he never acts to harm himself. He reminds his dear bride that the contract has already entered into force, and the girl understands that the decision has been made. Mikuel will enter the Tamila Academy. At that moment, the man who arrived introduces himself. He is Demian, the director of Tamia's academy, and it is an honor to meet her. The young lady feels that events are moving too quickly, but calmly introduces herself as Arcel de Liard. She adds that this is Mikuel de Liard, and he's enrolling in their academy. The man nods briefly, as if everything is already decided. Then he suggests going inside. The girl enters the room and notices that her husband is sitting there too. She realizes that in front of her is that very arrogant director of the academy, and involuntarily wonders what methods he used to achieve all this. Now he looks impeccable and elegant. But amidst the raging waves, he is a man who mercilessly deals with his enemies. He sends countless people into the depths of the sea, plunging them into eternal sleep, and therefore she must not let her guard down. Otherwise, she'll simply be eaten. The director approaches her and asks if Mr. Mikuel intends to enroll in their academy. The girl notices how formal his tone is and calmly replies that yes. She wonders what they told him that he's trying so hard to appear friendly. It usually takes months just to get in touch with this arrogant director. The main character turns to Mikuel, but the boy stubbornly remains silent. Kale looks at him with a slight smirk, and the girl is confused, trying to understand what is happening between them. The director turns to Mrs. Arcel again, and the girl firmly declares that Mikuel, he enrolls in the Faculty of Magic. The man nods approvingly, and the boy quietly asks his sister if he will become a magician. The girl recalls that the novella said that a young man could become a general mage who is born on the continent once every 1,000 years. If he follows this path, he will find his calling and will be able to live happily and not freeze in hopelessness. But if he doesn't like it, she won't force him. She says he can choose any faculty. However, the boy resolutely replies that since she said magic, that means he will become a mage. And she only smiles, because this is her sweet little brother. The principal announces that starting this semester, Mikuel will be enrolled as a first-year student in the magic department at Tamila Academy. He hands over the application and explains that after signing it, the young man will immediately go to Tamila. He also warns that after enrollment, Mikuel will not be able to meet with outsiders except during strictly defined periods. And he won't be able to return to the mansion either. Hearing this, the young man suddenly declares that he won't go then. The girl asks in surprise what he means, but the boy remains silent again. The Duke coldly remarks that a child remains a child and does not understand the price his sister paid for this chance. He adds that it would be foolish to miss such an opportunity, otherwise all his sister's efforts would be in vain. The main character is stunned and does not understand why he says such words to her brother. The man grins and says that the young man's gaze seemed to him like the gaze of a wild animal, but in fact, it was just a cheeky puppy. He takes the pen and calmly adds that if the boy wants to miss the chance and stay close to the puppy, the vast expanses of the ducal lands are quite enough to raise such a stubborn little dog. The young man clutches the pen in his hand, and the director asks if he has made a decision. The boy silently signs the application, and the heroine thinks with relief that everything is finally resolved. The man adds that now a guardian's signature is needed. The girl takes the pen, and the director apologizes for the indiscreet question. He is interested in what kind of relationship exists between His Highness the Duke and the new student. The man asks with a slight grin if he really wants to know the answer, and rises from his seat. He covers the girl's hand with his own, crosses out her previous name and writes his own, and he tells her to remember, this guy is his wife's brother. After some time, the girl sees the young man off and quietly says that if he doesn't want to go, he can stay. But the boy firmly replies that he will go and become stronger for his sister's sake. They were left alone among the enemy, and he would return stronger. With these words, he left. The girl understands that this is the end of one chapter. Now that Mikuel is at the academy, even if she breaks up with the Duke, he won't be able to harm his brother. The man turns to the young lady and notices that her younger brother has left safely. And now it's their turn. Arsel asks if he's going to the island, and the man looks at her in surprise. Does she really know about this too? The girl realizes that Janat's true kingdom is a base from which pirate activity is conducted, and the mansion is merely a cover. She asks to postpone the trip to the island a bit. The man asks why, and she explains that she needs to sort out family matters before her long absence. The island is not a place for outsiders, and it will be difficult for her to deal with internal matters there. For her plans, she needs to borrow the knight Janat. The man reminds her that she didn't want to be in debt. The girl calmly replies that she does not consider it a duty. She adds that this is a chance for House Janat to see what's going on in the Liar family. Currently, almost all of House Liar's servants are spies for other families. A loyal knight will soon join them, but before he arrives, she will use Janat's power, and this time, House Liar will not fall. She says the details will be discussed at home. A little later, someone addresses His Highness. A knight named Allay asks if he is serious about marrying Lady Liar. The man calmly replies that the decision has already been made and orders help for Liar's house. The knight, in despair, asks him to change his mind. The brunette coldly remarks that if he is worried about the leaking of naval secrets, then there is nothing to worry about. The young man objects that after the wedding they might become strangers, and then their secrets will come out. The man sharply warns that if he opens his mouth again, he will send him into the sea and plunge him into eternal sleep. He asks if he really doubts that he will win the battle on his own territory, and why did the man who knows his secret suddenly start to contradict him? He understood that the girl knew about the pirate machinations, but since she was aware of it, so she should have known better than to cross his path. At that moment, the main character enters the office. She approaches the table and addresses Sir Ella, asking if he has been attending to the affairs of the estate. The knight is at a loss, then declares that he is, after all, a knight and not a butler. The girl understands that he is one of those who cannot lie. She gently says everything is fine, adding that she knows of people entrusted with the internal affairs of the Duchy of Janat. Judging by His Highness's trust, he is one of them. She asks if this is true, and the young man admits that he has been involved in these matters for some time. The girl asks him for help, and he's amazed at how she knows so much. She explains that before leaving, she wants to put the affairs of the Liar household in order. To keep her servants from worrying, it is important for her to make sure that her decisions are correct. She understands that before her rebirth, she was an ordinary schoolgirl, and only partially remembers the lessons of Count Liar and his wife. No matter how hard she tries, mistakes are inevitable, and those around her are just waiting for her to miss. She points to the papers and emphasizes that special attention must be paid to public safety in the region. Most likely, the Knights of House Lyre have been bribed by a third party, but they must act with caution and friendliness. She explains that if this is the case, they are no longer true Knights of House Lyre, and therefore security controls will have to be tightened. The girl unfolds the map and says that all the noble families in the area, especially blood relatives, have already set their sights on the possessions of House Lyre. For them, Lyre's domain is like a sweet slice of a coveted pie. But to eat it, you first have to carefully cut a slice. No one would refuse such a treat, and they certainly wouldn't let it go to waste. This is why bribed knights and servants now diligently carry out orders, thinking that they are working for the real master. But the girl calmly asks herself why she shouldn't eat the pie they've already prepared. The knight sighs heavily and understands that she does not mind him learning about the internal affairs of the Lyre house. He reaches for the bundle of papers, but the girl gently stops him and reminds him that he and His Highness the Duke are allies, albeit temporary. And he is a knight the Duke trusts. Therefore, she too is willing to trust him for the sake of cooperation. Elaha agrees. The young lady thanks him and cautiously asks if she could ask one more favor. After some time, the knight is already leaving on an errand, but the words of his master are still ringing in his head. He asked why he suddenly started to argue, and the young lady came to mind, who said she would trust him in the hopes of cooperation, and he understands. They both pressure him, but he can't object. Meanwhile, the girl sets off on her journey with her husband. The guy looks out the window and remembers how she asked to borrow the knight Janat, promising to discuss the details of the house. He then asked her what she would do if he refused because of unfavorable conditions. And the young lady calmly replied that she would offer the deal to someone else. Kale found this odd. He didn't like this option, and now he notices people from the mainland rarely come to the island. The girl replies that she knows. It's Janat's secret territory. The man grins and says she really does know a lot, even that the sea off the island is extremely rough. The young lady admits she didn't know this. He adds that all outsiders who arrive on the island become its residents. Simply put, they never set foot on the mainland again. Soon, the girl boards a boat, and then a ship. Seeing the endless sea, she is not afraid, but sincerely admires it. The wind gently caresses her face. Before her transformation, she had never been to sea, and now its true expanse opens up before her. But suddenly, the ship lists sharply, and the girl almost falls overboard. Kale instantly catches her and warns her to be careful. With a slight smile, he asks, "Is this her first time in the open sea?" She replies that it's her first time swimming so far. And yet, she thinks something else is more important right now. Why does the undone buttons of his shirt bother her so much? The guy notices her confusion and asks if she's feeling ill. She quickly replies that everything is fine, it's just that there's too much going on around her and she doesn't know what to look at first. Kale smiles and says it's obvious. She's rarely been on a ship, and local sailors rarely see people from the mainland. One of them remarks that the sea is surprisingly calm today. The other nods in agreement. The girl asks again if it's really calm. After all, the islanders don't allow outsiders, and the waves look terrifying. The young man again notes her awareness and asks with interest. Will she answer if he asks how she knows so much about Janat? The young lady smiles and says, of course not. She understands that even if she told him the truth, he wouldn't believe her. He might even send her into eternal sleep, despite his promise of marriage. Kale admits that his curiosity is nagging him, and it looks like he'll have to find out everything himself. He approaches her and quietly tells her that he will find out how she revealed the secrets of his lands. The girl closes her eyes and shyly tells him to do as he sees fit. Then she remembers that there are people on the island who work with information. They're willing to get their hands dirty and even lose their freedom for the sake of information. If necessary, they'll learn everything about Arsal Deliar. Except for one thing, that she simply moved into this body. The girl decides to change the subject and turns to her husband. She says she heard that pirates don't like women on board. One of the pirates catches her gaze and quickly turns away, as if afraid. The man sighs and explains that there used to be a superstition about a ghost on a ship after a woman had set foot on it, but no one believes that anymore. After all, his mother once cut off about 20 heads of particularly superstitious people and sent their bodies into the sea. So there's nothing to worry about. If anyone dares to spout such nonsense, they'll simply be thrown overboard. And the girl is amazed at how he says this with a beaming smile. Suddenly, she remembers that the Duke's parents were unable to manage the family business because of their softness. And at that very moment, the ship hits the wave again, and she loses her balance again. Kale holds her back and apologizes, saying that holding on to him is much safer than the railing. He remarks that he's glad she's not trying to escape. The young lady asks him, surprised, what he's talking about. And suddenly he looks up to the sky. A thunderstorm is starting, and something enormous is rising out of the water ahead. The girl, horrified, realizes it's a monster, but she doesn't have time to finish. One of the pirates jumps on the creature with a huge weapon, plunges it right into the eye, cuts the rope, and returns to the ship. Kale calmly says it's over. The girl pulls away and thanks him, but he replies that it's unnecessary. Then, with a grin, he asks her if she's surprised that such a lowly man touched her. She thinks she is, but how can a duke speak like that about himself? He replies that he looks more like a butcher. After all, looking at the bloody mess, he feels nothing. And she understands that this is true. She almost fell into eternal sleep, and now does not intend to trust her life to those she does not know well. Kale remarks that the people from the mainland consider pirates rude and low, and asks if she is willing to be around such people. The girl clutches the fabric of her dress and confidently answers, "Why not?" He pauses for a moment, then calls Chris. He comes up and introduces himself as the captain's chief mate. Kale invites the young lady to introduce herself, and she confidently says, her name is Arsel Deliar, and soon she will become Arsel von Janat. One of the sailors cries out in shock. The chief mate realizes. He himself was no less shocked when he heard this from the captain. The sailor was outraged that a stranger had been brought aboard the ship, and he asks if the captain plans to bury her at sea later. The girl coldly considers what he's talking about. She calmly remarks that if the next head of House Liar were to disappear at sea, rumors would spread across the continent. And he asks if he really thinks that the Duke is capable of putting his bride into eternal sleep. The sailor immediately apologizes and declares that he deserves to be plunged into eternal sleep for his rudeness. Kale grins and says his fiancée has already said it all for him. If the assistant wants to try the seawater, that can be arranged. He quickly apologizes, admits his rudeness, and finally introduces himself. He is the second mate and deputy commander of the Janat Night Squad, named Lee Ji-on. The girl looks at him intently. The man reminds her that no one on the mainland knows about Janat Island. Only the most devoted servants and family members know about it. And now she, too, is Janat. So, a man of the sea. The girl just smiles and says, "That sounds good." She approaches the railing and notices that the current near the island is much stronger than it seemed. The boy explains that this current leads to Anna, the homeland of monsters. The girl quietly replies, "That's how it is." She realizes she's almost become monster food and needs to be more careful. But at that moment, one of the workers nimbly leaps past her. The girl is surprised and thinks what would have happened if he had broken down. The man asks if she was impressed by the trick and adds, a much greater surprise awaits her. She cautiously asks if they're talking about monsters again. Knights approach them, and one asks the captain whether to drop anchor. At the same time, the maid hurries to Mrs. Shiat. She reports that His Highness's ship has docked. Shiata is surprised by the commotion, and the maid says that an important person has arrived. Shiata asks if this is a sea guest. The maid replies, no, and he carefully adds that this is the Duke's future bride. And that means the future mistress of the castle. Shiata snorts that the chieftain would never take a mainland girl as a bride, and orders Lila tied to the bow of the ship, leaving for the next voyage. The maid insists she's serious. After a while, the maids line up to welcome their master back. The head maid asks if the flight went smoothly. Then he spots a young lady and realizes it's the one from the mainland. She greets her and promises the island won't disappoint. The man gently corrects her so that she is not addressed as a sea guest because soon she will become the mistress of the castle. Shiata thinks it's a great joke and looks at the mainland girl with disbelief. But he still answers that he will carry out the order and clarifies what to do with the sea guest who is already here. The man tells you to leave everything as is and follow the usual procedure. This is an order. Then he asks the young lady if she would like something to eat first. A servant stands next to him with a stack of papers, business awaiting him. He promises to come later. The girl agrees and is escorted to the dining room. The head maid walks ahead. As she goes down the stairs, she notices the room where food is brought in. There sits a man with a desperate expression on his face. A little later, the maid says she can call her Shiata. The girl replies that for now, just Arsel is fine, and Arsel agrees. Shiata asks them to wait a bit. The food will be brought soon. At that moment, the other maids peek into the room. One asks if she's okay with fish. The girl is about to reply that she is, but another maid protests that a guest from the mainland requires exquisite food. Arsel calmly remarks that she even prefers fish to meat. The maid insists the fish is delicious, but another wonders if her brains have been salted by the seawater. The mistress has just swum across a sea full of fish, and yet she's being offered fish for dinner again. The main character calmly says that any dish will do for her. The head maid sighs heavily and orders the disputants to leave. The girl laughs quietly, and the maid apologizes that they haven't yet learned noble etiquette. If the mistress is uncomfortable, they can be transferred elsewhere. The young lady smiles softly and replies that everything is fine. Then she notices the outdated decor and moldings. It's clear from the interior that the owner hasn't been here for a while, and she'll be in charge of the castle for a while. This will be good practice before she returns and becomes the full-fledged mistress of the Liar household. The girl says she'll be staying on the island for a long time and needs to get used to it. The woman realizes she was expecting to see a capricious aristocrat. But before her is a completely different girl. She asks the mistress to speak frankly if something is wrong. The main character thanks and asks to inspect the residence tomorrow. The woman agrees, promises to bring a map, and adds that the captain has been absent for a long time, so he has a lot of things to do. The girl nods and says that she'll see him tomorrow then. And she thinks, by this time, the sea guest's meal should have already ended, and the conversation between the Duke and Chiata struck her as strange. She wonders who is called a sea guest here. At this moment, the Duke enters the room and apologizes for the wait. He asks if she can spare him a little time. Meanwhile, desserts are being served. The man asks her about her plans after dinner. She replies that she hasn't thought about it yet. He remarks that she might be tired after the long sea voyage. Arsel admits she's tired, but asks him not to worry. She's not going to wander around mindlessly. She knows Janat's biggest secret, but he may have other ones she'd rather not know. If she starts digging from day one, who knows, maybe she'll become a sea guest. The Duke only smiles. He asks if she knows what a sea guest is. She replies no, realizing that the story didn't mention it. But the atmosphere was clear. She assumed such a guest was unlikely to return home. Calling someone who's arrived on the island simply a guest is pointless. Janat keeps too many secrets. The man notices that his fiancée is much smarter than he thought. He tells her about an old superstition. If you refuse a guest, the next voyage will bring punishment. Therefore, until midnight, they are treated with hospitality, especially during the day, when it is as if the sea god is watching over them. And after midnight, they are dealt with as uninvited. Such people are called seamen. He then adds that she has nothing to worry about and can go wherever she wants. People here know how to sense the currents, both the sea and the human. No one will contradict the future owner. And if he dares, he can throw it at Anna. The girl remembers. He said this current led to the homeland of monsters. To a dark abyss full of monsters. Her hands tremble involuntarily as she reaches for the dessert. One wrong move could sweep her away. Now looking at him, she feels a little embarrassed. And she wonders why he's looking so intently. After all, everyone here is wary of people from the mainland. The man pushes the dessert towards her and asks if this means she is not going to do anything. The girl replies that if the topic is unpleasant for him, he should say so directly. Even if their marriage is a contract, she doesn't want to hurt his feelings. He says her actions won't affect Janat in any way. She feels a little hurt. But he continues that he doesn't care whether she buys a castle on the mainland or builds a new mansion for Lyre. She can take up an entire room for her wardrobe and take whatever she wants. He won't argue over such trifles. Janat won't skimp on her. The next morning, the young lady wakes up in her room. The head maid wishes her good morning and says it's a beautiful morning on the island. Arsel realizes she hasn't been able to sleep well since last night's conversation. The woman reports that it is already early morning and a light snack has been prepared for her. The girl asks about yesterday's sea guest. She is told that he was handed over to the sea. Arsel calmly eats a tomato and nods, and thinks about what to do on the island. First of all, don't make any lavish purchases. If she can't pay, she might be declared a sea guest and thrown into the sea. Marriage has protected Lyre's estate from encroachment. She can't afford to incur new debt. But Lyre has an important advantage. A prime location, grain fields on one side, the sea on the other. If security were strengthened, a profitable route could be established through their territory. First, the nightly corps needs to be brought into order, and Janat's knights have much to teach her. The girl decides to take a look at them today. Suddenly, someone runs in, addressing the mistress. The maid scolds her for her inappropriate behavior, but she says it's an emergency. It turns out that a ship disguised as a merchant ship encountered a group of monsters. There are no weapons on board, only hand-to-hand combat. And Miss Chiata's help is needed. The woman replies that she left the deck a long time ago. The protagonist understands the kind of people who serve here. They are ready to turn pirate at any moment. The knights guard Anna's borders. Therefore, there is no one else to steer the ship. The maid is surprised why everything happened in the southern waters, where the currents are particularly difficult. The girl suggests that if the monsters are chasing prey, they can travel far and are very sensitive to currents. She takes a map and begins to draw a plan. The maid admires her skill. Arsel explains where the ship is now and how the currents are going. The monsters must be lured into the Lyre waters. Strong westerly winds there alter the water's course. When confronted with the wind, the monsters will slow down and can then be defeated. The maid says it is possible, but will everything go smoothly? The girl replies that she must know the intricacies of her domain, and if the plan seems dubious, she'll go in person. The woman is stunned and asks him not to do it. After all, the lady is a guest from the mainland. She asks permission to take the map with her. Arsel agrees. And he asks Chiata not to worry. She will be able to go to the parade ground later. It's more important to help the ship now. The maid is shocked but bows. She promises to send other maids to look after the mistress and apologizes for the rush. Arsel asks her to hurry. As she watches, she realizes that this girl from the mainland knows the sea and the secret of Janat. And of noble birth, too. It's all true. Another maid hurries Chiata. The main character approaches the window and wonders if everything will be okay. A mistake will turn into disaster. But she's confident. Before making the deal with Janat, she thoroughly studied Lyre's waters. Looking outside, she spots Kael von Janat and Sir Ella. It seems he's already finished his business in Lyre. The man looks at her. She wonders if he heard about Xiada's departure and whether he considers her intervention unnecessary. But he just turns around and leaves. She wonders where exactly. The maids enter the room and greet the precious guest. They say Miss Xiada told them to take care of her. Arsel notes how quickly they arrived. But the atmosphere seems strange. She notices traces of red liquid on the dress of one of them, and a cold look that quickly gives way to a smile. The maid suggests taking a walk along the shore so that the guest doesn't get bored. Arsel replies that she would like to inspect the residence first. They offer her a trip to a meadow with rare flowers not found in the Han Empire. The girl realizes they're trying to take her outside the fortress. Janat Castle stands in the center of the island. Surrounding it are vassal families who have been involved in piracy since the time of Kael's grandfather. A month ago, when Kael assumed the title of Duke, almost all the families rebelled. He cast the traitors into eternal slumber. Only the Van Riel remained loyal. The faithful were left in the east, while the families of the rebels were exiled to the south, their ties severed. Arsel realizes she hasn't seen these girls before. They appeared right after Xiada left. It looks like this is the work of the vassals. She decides to agree to the walk, but he specifies that he wants to see flowers in the castle garden. The maids coldly agree, and they go into the garden. One shows a flower and calls it anorexia. Arsel praises its beauty, though she herself doubts the name. The maids insist that she must hurry to the meadow before sunset and ask if she would mind speeding up. The girl agrees, wondering what family this maid is from. They dared to act in broad daylight in the heart of the residence. It seems the time has come to confront them openly. At this moment, the Duke appears and asks what is going on here. Arsel asks if he too has come to the garden. She's been told that beautiful flowers bloom in the meadows. The man calmly says that it means they are admiring the flowers. He comes closer and asks if these girls were brought from the mainland without his knowledge. The maids are frightened. The Duke remarks that his wife probably likes red flowers. They say there are many of them on the mainland. Arsel doesn't understand what he's getting at. He reminds her that she knows a lot about the island, and he asks if she knows how they get rid of garbage here. The girl realizes that these are people from a rebel family. They wanted to use her against Kael von Janat. And that was extremely stupid. After all, a man wouldn't risk his life for a contract bride. Now he calmly says he recently put things in order, but it seems he still missed something. He slowly draws his sword from its sheath and says with mild annoyance, "What a pity." The next moment, desperate cries are heard. He then approaches the young lady and remarks that since she has kindly collected the dust for him, then he's obliged to treat her. But, looking at what's happening, the girl only trembles. The Duke quietly says that it seems she doesn't like red flowers after all, and he carefully covers her eyes with a handkerchief. He orders the knight to clean up everything around and asks her not to open her eyes so as not to get dirty in the pollen of the scarlet petals. The girl understands that in the future she will hold this man's hand. For that very hand that can, in an instant, plunge someone into eternal sleep. It's a strange feeling. The man says it's all over now, and he himself doesn't like red flowers. And when she touches his hand, for some reason she feels calmer. Later at the table, he says he saw Xiada rushing to help and heard that the girl had helped. Arsel replies that there was no time to waste. The Duke remarks that the Janat family has a wonderful bride, and they should serve her with dignity. The girl admits she was a little scared, but now everything is fine. He adds that he banished the Testelli long ago, but they are still somewhere nearby. Arsel remembers hearing that name before. Seeing the Duke fall silent, she realizes this is a chance to return to the conversation they've been putting off. She starts talking about marriage, and he calmly replies that he is listening. The girl notes that the condition of their union was that Mikuel graduated from the academy, so it would be wiser to divorce immediately after his graduation. The Duke chuckles that they haven't set a wedding date yet, and she's already thinking about divorce. She frankly admits she's considered this as well. He adds that the families of the Eastern Sea are eager to acquire the lands of Lyre. The girl agrees. Then he says the marriage needs to be announced across the continent so that Lyre's hunters will keep their tails between their legs. She nods, but wonders if a lavish wedding followed by divorce will damage Janat's reputation. With his looks, remarriage won't be a problem, and every time she is involuntarily struck by his beauty. The Duke says that the wedding should be held quickly but on a grand scale, and in 6 months at the most everything can be arranged. The girl gently objects that it is unlikely to happen so soon. He asks if there's anything she doesn't like about Janat. She replies, as Lyre's heir, she will become the full head only at the age of 20, and only then will she receive real power over the water area. The man asks her not to worry, because those who encroach on the sea lands of Lyre will gradually disappear, and he reminds her that the late Count Lyre's younger brother is still alive. The girl confirms and recalls that it was he who first coveted the title. Without her, he would take precedence over Mikuel. The Duke says it's better to announce the wedding sooner, to show that wolves can lose their own heads. As long as the marriage lasts, his name is her protection. Arsel understands that this is reasonable, but the devil never acts to his own detriment. She must become a wall for Mikuel herself. She firmly says she doesn't want it, said that Janat protected liar. She will defend the honor of her house herself. So he proposes marriage when she turns 20. She can't refuse. After all, Mikuel is already at the academy. She will remain on the island both before and after the wedding. The Duke replies that she can do as she wishes. At this point, the maid announces that she has brought what he asked for. The Duke orders him in. The girl is surprised to see the bouquet intended for her. She realizes that this is her request to Sir Allay before his departure to Lyre. Then she asked him for a favor, and he agreed. She asked me to gather blue Sylvacia flowers from Lyre's garden. They are usually silver, but in their estate, under the influence of Mikuel's magic, they turned blue. These flowers were proof that Sir Allay was indeed in Lyre. But now the Duke has the bouquet. She asks, surprised, why. He remembers how he was initially puzzled as to why Ella needed a bouquet for Lady Lyre, and then simply took it, deciding to give it to her himself. Now he smiles and says that Allay is busy with knightly affairs, so he asked him to help. Then Allay merely tried to explain that there had been a misunderstanding. Arcel nods calmly. She thanks him for the flowers he sent her, and he replies that it's nothing. Then he asks if she likes blue flowers as much. After all, Janat's garden has plenty of beautiful plants too. She replies that she simply loves Sylvacia from the Lyre estate. The Duke falls silent for a moment. At this point, the maid announces that there is another package for the lady. The Duke is surprised. Arcel immediately guesses that this letter is from Mikuel. She says he must be busy adapting, but still found time to write. The girl asks permission to return to the room first to read the letter. The man notices that this is the first time he has seen such an expression on her face, and gives her permission. She thanks him and almost runs away, leaving him alone. He also lets the maid go. Left in silence, he recalls her words about marriage at 20, and that she intends to stay on the island. He smiles, then looks at the empty seat opposite. He leans back in his chair and says that after Mikuel de Lyre graduates from Temia Academy, they will divorce. Temia has strict graduation requirements, so there is plenty of time before the divorce. But given Mikuel's abilities, perhaps it wasn't worth sending him there. Otherwise, the girl would have chosen another family without hesitation. He sighs heavily, and he wonders why his head hurts so much. When will he get the Lyre waters? The contract will be completed, and if Lyre's maritime holdings fall into his hands, no one will be able to resist Janat. He takes the bell and calls the head maid. A woman enters and asks if His Highness called him. He recalls that Janat's mission is to hunt monsters throughout the Eastern Sea, and he asks if there's any news about the ship from the South Sea. Inside, he feels tired of all this. Meanwhile, Arcel is reading Mikuel's letter. He asks how his little sister is doing and worries about whether the letter will arrive. She smiles and reads on. He writes that he's enrolled in the Faculty of Magic, just as she said. He didn't know he was capable of magic and asks if she knew. Arcel is sure she did. Mikuel promises to become a powerful magician and help her in everything. He enclosed in the envelope a magical flower that will never fade. He made it because flowers don't grow well in a maritime climate. And remembering that they were surrounded by enemies. He wants to get stronger as soon as possible and return to protect her. But first, he needs to finish his training. The girl sits down and begins to write a reply. She admits that she's bored. At this time, the knights come ashore and joyfully shout that they are alive. They are met and ordered to bring food and water. One admits he thought he'd never feel the ground under his feet again. The maid tells the pirate he looks better than she expected. He replies that he almost became monster food, but thanks to the plan, they managed to lure the foolish Lotta out. He asks if it was really his guest's idea. They tell him yes, and she drew the map herself. Later, they sit at the table. One wonders where a man from the mainland got such knowledge of sea charts. Another admits that he thought the story about the bride from the mainland was a fiction. But now it is clear that she knows the sea no worse than the islanders, and they wonder if they will now be able to openly engage in piracy. A man arrives at the Janat villa. The maid informs him that His Highness is away. He insists that he must see the Duke, and he demands to contact him again. Meanwhile, Mikuel is racing through the academy. He bumps into someone, apologizes as he runs, and returns to the room. He takes out a knife and carefully opens the letter from his sister. She writes that she is glad of his safe arrival, and she received his magical flower. In return, she sends compressed petals of island flowers that resemble his. She hopes he likes it. Mikuel looks at them longingly, and he decides that he won't use them as a bookmark, but will save them separately. She asks if he got into a fight with anyone. He can almost hear her voice. She reminds him that if things get too hard, he can come back. The main thing is his happiness. He firmly says that he will not back down, even if it is difficult. He's troubled by the fact that his sister remained with that man. He recalls the Duke's words about the price of her sacrifice, and he understands that he must graduate from the academy. At the end of the letter, she promises to write more often and says that she misses him. He realizes that letters can be received more often than once a month. She also writes that she will get married after 20 and asks when he can come. Meanwhile, the Duke at the table clarifies whether they are talking about the eldest son of the Marquis of Bia. The maid confirms that yes, and he again demands a meeting. He wants to buy even more and is ready to double or even triple the amount. The man calmly says, "That's how it is." And the young lady immediately wonders if he's talking about Allay. It is a first-class spice that, around this time, greatly increased the official income of the Duke of Janat. The fragrant substance from the western part of the continent captivated Eastern aristocrats, but the true reason for its value lies much deeper. The man says he doesn't understand why he's so persistent in asking for the goods. It seems that people from the mainland like the taste with a slight smoky flavor, although he himself cannot understand it. He reflects that there are plenty of fish dishes on the island, and, fortunately, the bride likes everything. Then he asks if she wants to try Allay. The young lady confidently replies yes. He orders the spice brought. As for Nilamata, Bea orders him sent back as it's not worth ruining families, trust for petty gain. Sometime later, the main character is sitting in the office and leisurely drinking tea. She understands that Kale does not yet know the real reason why the Eastern nobles are hunting Allay so much. The spice contains magical powers, and this is what attracts people to it. Because of this, many people literally lose their minds, and later magicians monopolized it and raised the price several times. This was done by magicians from a tower in the center of the continent. Although the connection between magic and the spice is not officially recognized, later her Uncle Par accidentally discovers this connection and makes a huge profit. Remembering what the Viscount did to Lyre's house in the novel, she can't turn a blind eye to it. Therefore, the first thing I intend to do is to break the deal with him. At this point, the maid asks if she should be escorted out. Arsel understands that if he tells about Allay, this will bring Janat enormous benefits, but she already knows too much about the island. It's better not to arouse unnecessary suspicion. She asks to bring some Allay, if it is kept in Janat, and paper for writing. The maid is surprised, calling it charcoal powder, and asks what it's for. The girl replies that neither she nor Mikuel have seen it, and wants to send some to her brother. The maid agrees. Arsel knows the islanders don't like Allay. She considers its price. It's enough to last a simple family for years. But for Janat, this is a trifle, and Mikuel, as a magician, will surely understand his value. When Allay becomes a true luxury, she will talk to Kale again and offer to increase profits. Even though Janat is a pirate, Kale won't turn down a lucrative business opportunity. This will help both Janat and Lyre. Pirate Janat doesn't understand Allay's true value. Perhaps it's not ignorance. Rather, he simply rejects what he doesn't like, even if magic is the source of life. The girl wonders if the islanders hate the spice not because of its smell. Perhaps it is the magical power within her that repels them. Meanwhile, a servant enters the Duke's office. He asks what happened. The headmaid replies that it is nothing serious, but it concerns his fiancée. He becomes wary. Shiata says the girl is interested in mages. The Duke asks what she means, and thinks perhaps she is simply curious as a mainlander. There were no mages in Lyre's house, so the interest is understandable. But the island is no place for mages. Why did she become interested now? Then he remembers that there's a mage in her circle, that same cheeky puppy. Shiata reports that she's learned the price of Allay on the mainland and seems to be willing to strike a deal with the mages. He asks if she intends to sell them the spice. The woman confirms. Moreover, the girl sent some of Allay to her brother. The Duke ponders. Interest in mages, interest in Allay, and a brother learning magic. Are magicians and Allay connected? But something else worries him. He asks if the maid reads her letters. Shiata replies that yes. Then he orders them not to do it again. The maid is surprised. He understands. She might be offended. Silence falls between them, and he sighs heavily. This could drive you crazy. He understands the risk of information about the island leaking, but he lets the situation take its course, just so as not to hurt her feelings. He asks Shiata if she remembers what happened recently in the garden. She replies that of course she does. He turns to the window and looks out at the sea and beyond it, the mainland. From there she came, and there she will return one day. He quietly says that he doesn't understand. Shiata asks what exactly. He replies that he doesn't know why he did it. It was ineffective. He had to find out who was behind the maids, and not send them all into eternal sleep at once. He was too angry. Their attempts to dodge the sword reminded him of something. They were clearly from the Testelli family. They should have been captured alive and used as evidence. Why did he act so recklessly? But when he sees her golden eyes and hair shining like the sun, and her soft smile on her small face, she seems so fragile and sweet. Suddenly he slams his fist on the table. The maid flinches. He himself is amazed by his own thoughts. At that moment, voices are heard outside the door. Someone announces the arrival of the lady. The Duke orders them in. The young lady enters and asks if she is disturbing. He replies no. She says she has a proposition. She wants to host a reception featuring the Janat sea traders. He clarifies whether it is about magicians. She is surprised, but confirms that she wanted to invite them in for a conversation. He notices that her interest in magicians appeared suddenly. She replies that organizing the reception is the right of the hostess. He agrees. She asks if they can go together. And she adds that if he is busy, someone from Janat's family can accompany her. He realizes that his facial expression might have betrayed his reluctance to go. But he says he'll go. She asks if it's true, and he says why not. The maid mentally clutches her head. This whole thing is a complete headache. Arsel calmly says that then they'll go together. She adds that she thought he didn't like magicians. He replies that he doesn't love her, but he won't leave his bride alone on a ship full of dubious characters. Moreover, this is the first banquet where she will be presented as the future hostess of Janat. She asks if he pays attention to her surroundings because of the wedding. He confirms and asks to continue the conversation later. The owner of the island has too much to do. Returning to the office, the girl realizes that the appointment is in a few days. I need to contact the mages and deliver it to Allay. She says mages don't like glitter. Therefore, it is worth reducing the glittering decoration of the ship if this does not interfere with safety. And place the guards so they're unobtrusive. The maid agrees. She is amazed. The young lady hasn't really made her debut in society yet, but she acts as if she has had dozens of appointments. Arsel asks to prepare a suitable outfit, appropriate for Eastern social circles. She will be presented as the Duke's wife, and she must look dignified. The maid reports that the captain wanted to meet with her regarding the outfit. She is surprised that the Duke wanted to see her. Soon they're riding in a carriage. The girl remembers that in the book there were no carriages on the island. She mentions this. He replies that they really weren't there before, and he adds that he could not allow his precious bride to ride. She remembers that Arsel cannot ride a horse, unlike most nobles. The girl thanks him and asks where they are going. He says he knows about the upcoming appointment, and he wants to relieve her of unnecessary worries. She clarifies what concerns exactly she is talking about. He answers, for example, about choosing an outfit. She smiles and asks if they're going to look at clothes. He says there's a family of artisans on the island. The girl realizes he's much more caring than he seemed. In the book, Duke Janat wore a modest black and white uniform instead of luxurious robes. After all, it's hard to steer a ship in lavish finery. That's exactly how it was described. He doesn't really care what he wears, but he's seriously concerned about his future wife's appearance. He looks at the young lady and calmly says that they have arrived. The girl gets out of the carriage and looks around. It looks like an ordinary house, nothing special. The captain is immediately greeted by an elderly couple. They say they've been waiting for him. Another knight runs into the room and addresses the captain. The protagonist is involuntarily surprised by his appearance. The young man greets the captain and Lady Arsel, but the Duke dryly remarks that he should dress more decently. The guy, finally realizing what state he was in, turns around abruptly. He apologizes and promises to return quickly. The girl realizes this is Sir Li Jian's mansion. The man says he should have warned her, otherwise it would have been awkward. She replies that it was a bit unexpected, but she's still curious why they brought her here. The maid offers to show her the way. However, the Duke raises his hand and says he'll show them everything himself. And Li Jian should be reminded of his manners. The boy's parents sheepishly apologize and leave. Kale extends his hand to his wife. He leads her down the hallway to one of the rooms. The girl asks if he comes here often. He replies that he came here only once, when he was 6 years old. He hasn't returned here since. The girl wonders if this was mentioned in the book. She gradually learns things about Kale that have never happened in history. They enter a spacious room, and the girl sees many outfits. The man leads her to the dresses and says that now all of this belongs to her. She notices that the styles resemble Kale's own uniform. He adds that if she wears one of these dresses, everyone will understand whose wife she is. He comes closer and says that if someone doesn't show respect, let her remind him that she is the wife of Duke Janat. At least in the Eastern Sea, she is no less than the emperor. The girl feels that he is standing too close. He takes a small box, opens it, and takes out the decoration. She asks if this is why they came. He replies that he wanted to pick out a suitable dress for her, but he is not sure whether he made the right choice, given her high standards. The girl realizes the style matches what she usually wears. Was he really watching? He asks her if she likes the outfit, and adds that with this decoration, the look will be complete. Then he carefully puts the earring on her, asking her to forgive her for her boldness. She realizes he's thought through everything, from the dress to the accessories, and notices that he clearly knows his stuff. He replies that long years at sea teach one many things. Then he asks her to close her eyes for a moment. The girl doubts, but still closes them. A moment later, she feels something cool on her skin. Opening his eyes, he realizes it's cream. He asks if she's that surprised. She's shocked, of course, but says it's just a little bit. He gently tucks a strand of her hair behind her ear. Then he takes another remedy and says that he learned something from his mother. She often complained that the island wind seemed to choke her. She found it hard here and felt disappointed. She said that stories about the honesty of the islanders were just a beautiful legend, but in reality they were much more cynical. The girl thinks, because Kale is also an islander. He says he was too young to understand everything back then, but the locals never say directly if they don't like someone. So his mother was sent to Anna. The girl doesn't immediately understand what's going on. Officially, Duchess Janat was sent into eternal sleep along with her husband due to an accident. But Kale is certain she was deliberately sent to Anna. The girl carefully asks if he was close to his mother. He clarifies which mother he's talking about, his biological mother or his stepmother. She's shocked, not knowing the Duke was involved with two mothers. He remarks that she knows the island's secrets, but not his own history. And he is even surprised that she was not interested in her fiancé's past. She understands that this simply wasn't in the book. And she says it's not a matter of indifference. The words about him banishing Tastelli come to her mind, but they are still somewhere nearby. The previous Duchess of Janat, Inette von Tastelli, was from the family of the current rebels. Due to poor health, they rarely saw each other. Kale, however, had gone to sea from a young age. The girl assumes that her stepmother was from Tastelli. He confirms and says that it was because of her that his biological mother was sent to Anna. The girl thinks that perhaps he knew since childhood the true reason for her plunging into eternal sleep. His mother was straightforward and too kind. Even as the most powerful knight, she couldn't refuse. She always took the initiative, but when she went to Anna's, no one wanted to go with her. And soon news came of her death. He quietly adds, if she had more power, no one would dare to harm her. Sometimes it seems to him that no one supported her, but this shouldn't concern Arsel. He asks her to feel free to use the name Janat, and not risk himself for others. Deep down, he wishes she would never be put into eternal sleep. He then says that he is done with the preparations and looks at her strangely. She realizes she only knew Kale as an image from a book, but now she feels his gentleness. He says that the preparations for the reception are complete and asks her to take the dress. The girl squeezes the fabric and remembers her past life. The older sister then said that she thought the man liked her too, and she apologized for the divorce. She promised to cry just today. Now Arsel understands that her duty is to protect Mikuel. She turns to His Highness and decides that she has no right to die for her brother's sake, and she shouldn't fall in love with Duke Janat, especially since she's certain he doesn't have feelings for her. He asks what happened. Later they are already sitting at the table. Watching her, he wonders if she is too tired from preparing for the banquet. Suddenly, a servant enters the room and tells her about a letter from her younger brother. The Duke wonders mentally why they are talking about this during a meal. Arsel says she's been waiting a long time for the letter and asks him to open it now. He agrees. She thanks him, and the maid hands over the letter. She promises to bring a reply later. Arsel thanks her, but the Duke feels a little forgotten. He asks if she would be as happy if the letter were from him. The girl asks with a smile if he wants to share some secret. If so, then let him say it right now, because they are together. The word together suddenly sounds too pleasant for him. She reads the letter. Mikuel writes that he didn't expect a reply, but is pleased with the surprise. And I wouldn't mind at all if she surprised him more often. But he was especially interested in the powder she sent. The girl smiled. She knew he would immediately sense the magic in the spice. He writes that he feels pure, magical energy, pleasant to magicians, and even ordinary people who are able to sense mana. She looks at the Duke and wonders if he is one of those people. It all fits. The islanders feel repulsed by magic. The Duke asks Chiara to bring him a piece of paper for his answer. The woman nods. The girl thanks him. He just smiles. After some time, Arsel writes a reply. She says that Mikuel clearly liked Allay. The Duke thinks about it. He promises to send his brother more spices. If his brother-in-law likes Allay, he'll send him a bottle when sales begin. The girl thanks him, but wonders why he cares so much about Michelle. They don't seem to get along very well, but this is a chance to mend their relationship. Even after a possible divorce, Lyre and Janat will remain neighbors. It's best not to get into debt. She asks how she can pay for the spice. For Lyre, the sum is significant, although for Janat it is trifles. He agrees that the difference is significant. She ponders what to do. And he offers to pay the amount in installments. But the Duke sharply replies that this is not necessary and slams his hand on the table. He adds that it's time for them to go, as Arsel Janat doesn't need the money. The young lady tries to object. But the man calmly says that if she wants to repay him so much, she can do it differently. And he asks her to come a little closer. The girl freezes, and he himself is shocked by what he just said. Arsel decides that it is about the upcoming reception and says that she should not worry. She will play her role properly. Kale realizes she missed the point, and for some reason these words offend him unpleasantly. He takes a step closer and asks if he can do whatever he wants on the ship. Then he adds that, as the reception organizer, he will take care of the magicians, and if she has business with them, he will try to meet her expectations. Several days pass, and the day of the reception arrives. Arsel looks at the mountain of prepared Allay. She's amazed at how much has been prepared. It clearly cost Janat quite a bit of money. She asked for a little spice for the reception, but Kale exceeded all expectations. He may not like magic, but he seems willing to establish relationships with mages. The maid reports that the captain sent one to Allay and her brother. Arcel makes sure everything is ready. The spices are in place, the preparation is complete. The food is fine too. At that moment, someone approaches her. He asks if she liked the prepared spice. The girl looks at him in surprise and asks if this is really His Highness. She thanks him, but adds that it wasn't worth the effort. He asks to consider it a gift from Janat. Arcel agrees, knowing the mages will definitely appreciate it. Then she asks him to take care of her today. He replies that today they will look like a married couple in everything but one thing. The girl asks what he means. He tells her to just call him Kale. And he reminds her that today he will officially introduce her for the first time. Will she really continue to call him His Highness? She replies no, although the marriage was never officially announced or hidden. In social circles, everyone notices quickly. And magicians love gossip, so they can't afford to look awkward. Once, while reading a novella, she thought how beautiful his name was, and how strange it would be to say it out loud. Kale says that people getting married should not be shy about calling each other by their first names. Arcel nods and quietly says his name. He calls her by her name in response. She still feels awkward. She doesn't understand how others do it so easily. For the Duke, it's a mere trifle. He smiles and extends his hand to her. He says it's time to go. She puts her hand in his, and the ship sets off. Arcel reminds them that the mages will board at the port. Kale replies that he saw the report. She asks him to listen to her request. He nods, offering to speak. The girl asks him to say almost nothing during the appointment. He is surprised. And with a slight smile, he thinks that with such a soft voice, she is actually telling him to be silent. He asks the reason. She replies that he makes too intimidating an impression. With such an innocent face, she seemed to have struck him straight in the heart. He reminds her that she already made a deal with him, and asks if he really does look scary. Arcel doesn't know how to answer, because it really is so. She honestly says that yes, he scares her, and she recalls the day of her arrival. Then she saw a scene that was impossible to forget. The men in black, in mourning clothes, were the families who had been subjected to his purge. Kale is silent and suddenly asks if she is afraid of him. She replies that she's afraid. He leans closer, and he asks his dear bride to say it to his face. Arcel looks at her in surprise, and he insists that she explain, looking into his eyes. She begins to understand that her words have hurt him. She says that he is the master of this sea, and at his command alone she can be plunged into eternal sleep. He reminds her of the contract. She replies that even with the contract, if he decides to get rid of her and declare war on Allay, she will have no choice. And if she falls into eternal sleep, everything will end. He asks if this means she can't trust him. She shakes her head and says he's a reliable business partner. She just has to consider all the risks. She gives the example of lightning being capable of destroying a mansion. He clearly doesn't like that. The words business partner sound like a boundary. He thinks she herself allowed him to do whatever he wanted on the ship. And now he's almost ready to cross that line. He leans toward her face. But Arcel suddenly asks what he is thinking about. After all, the magicians have already arrived at the port and will be here soon. He suddenly comes to his senses and is surprised by his own thoughts. Soon, the mages board the ship. One of them introduces herself. Her name is Medea, and she's the head of the second section of the Mage Tower. Arcel greets her. Kale watches silently. The girl introduces herself as Arcel Delir and points to Kale von Janat. The mages believe he can take life with a single glance. Arcel adds that he is her future husband. Kale smiles, and the mages look at each other in amazement. Someone announces the ship's departure. The magicians take their places. The maid informs Arcel that a cabin has been prepared for her to rest. She notices two maids and thinks that Rosetta and Shiata look remarkably alike. Could they really be twins? Shiata says one of them will have to go. Rumor has it that on the mainland, twins are considered a bad omen. Arcel, as a displaced person, doesn't understand this. She calmly replies that she doesn't care. Shiata explains that Rosetta is not leaving forever. It's just that the previous owner hated the twins, that's why she was scared. Arcel says he doesn't think twins are anything strange and doesn't believe in superstitions. The Duke is surprised by her words and smiles. The maid notices the resemblance to her previous mistress. Arcel jokingly says that then maybe it's worth putting a couple dozen people into eternal sleep to stop the stupid rumors. Everyone freezes at her words. Kale recalls how he himself said that those who talk nonsense will simply be thrown into the sea. Shiata assures that the mistress's words are enough. No one will dare disobey their future mistress. Arcel suggests they talk during the reception. The maid doesn't understand what this means. The girl notices that they have been separated for a long time. One serves in the mainland mansion of Janat, the other on the island. It might be superstition, but she doesn't think it was Kale's decision. After the banquet, she intends to find out who separated them and return Rosetta to the castle. Medea is watching them. She came out of curiosity, thinking the invitation was a cruel joke. The heads of other departments thought the same thing. After all, what happened here 50 years ago has really been forgotten. One of the previous dukes drowned magicians and the current one openly dislikes them. Is such a man capable of hosting a friendly reception? She meets his gaze, and his cold eyes make her feel uneasy. Arcel approaches Medea and asks if she is enjoying the evening. She replies that yes, it is unusual to be at a reception in the middle of the sea. Arcel smiles and takes out a bottle, sprinkling some spice onto the dish. Medea asks what it is. The girl replies that it's Allay and suggests trying it. Medea takes the bottle and freezes. She feels pure magical energy, like an ancient mana elixir. She asks what this substance is. Arcel explains that it's a Western spice called Allay, popular in the East. Medea wonders if it's easy to get in the West. Arcel replies that it's not that easy, but Janat imports it regularly. Medea asks if they can sell it to the Tower of Magicians. Arcel says that trading is possible, but the current batch is already booked. Then she leaves with her husband. She thanks Kale, and he smiles. The mages exchange shocked glances. They don't understand what's going on. According to rumors, they shouldn't have been so close. And Lady Lyre's reaction seems strange to them. Meanwhile, Arcel shows the magicians many jars of spices and continues the conversation. Arcel suggests splitting the samples between the departments and, if they like them, contacting the Mage Tower next quarter for a full deal. She clarifies that she's prepared to contact both the first and third departments. Medea responds sharply that there's no need. She explains that the first and third departments are busy with in-depth research and rarely leave the tower. They have little need for such a rare resource, capable of restoring energy in emergency situations. But the second department, which deals with practical magic, desperately needs Allay. Therefore, Medea declares that the entire volume will be purchased by the second department. She then hands over the artifact for direct communication and asks to contact her in the next quarter. Arcel notices that they really liked Allay and promises to respond, swearing by the name of Arcel de Lier. After some time, the magicians leave the ship, wishing Lady Arcel success and the Duke good health. Arcel thanks Kale for supporting her request, but he calmly notes that she knew from the very beginning that the magicians would want to buy Allay. From the reception decor to the choice of spices, everything was planned in advance. The girl doesn't immediately understand what he's getting at. She says Mikuel told her about Allay's properties, but she didn't expect such a stir. Kale smiles, but understands it's just a cover. He answers with a short, understood. He remembers how Shiata tried to find out how Ms. Arcel knew so much about the island. Even Janat's intelligence department couldn't dig up anything. He wonders if there is an unknown channel for transmitting information, since he personally eliminated all the traders on the island. And yet Arcel knew too much, both about the island and about Allay. Moreover, her letter to Mikuel looked like a carefully crafted defense against suspicion. He realizes that it could have been a well-constructed lie. Kale removes his hand from her shoulder, realizing that a person with such information could be dangerous. It is enough to squeeze this fragile neck. The thought flashes for a moment. But seeing her face, he stops and says that it is time to go back. The wind is getting cold. In his room, Arcel sighs heavily. She knew it would be a serious step, but was the banquet too provocative? She slaps her cheeks lightly, reminding herself not to panic. The main thing now is to focus on selling Allay and what will happen next. It's now 1993. She met Kale in December 1991. So there's not much time left. And soon she'll be able to bring him enormous benefits. A few days later, the maid informs the captain that Madame Arcel wants to see him. He thinks it's finally here. When asked why, he replies that he already knows. Arcel enters the office. He's confident she's ready to discuss selling Allay to the Mage Tower. The girl comes closer and says that she wants to propose. He offers to sit down and listen to her carefully. She begins by saying that the relationship between Janat and the mages has long been strained. Kale confirms that the dislike for them is almost in the blood, and asks what the point of this conversation is. Arcel carefully gets to the point and says that making a direct deal with the Mage Tower will be problematic. He calmly replies that if he sees them again, he might not be able to control himself and start a war. Then she offers to take over the negotiations. Among the Janats, she is the only one who can do this, so she has a proposal. She wants to create a stir and raise the price of Allay. As a result, Janat's income will grow, and in the future, the business could span the entire continent. Yes, piracy brings in more than the official reports to the Emperor, but such money is difficult to dispose of openly. Kale notices her confident look and says that he sees no point in increasing profits through trading with mages. She replies that she will take full control of the contact with the magicians, and he will not have to communicate with them. He asks her what her offer is. She replies, 50-50. Profits are split equally for 6 months. If income doubles normal, the split becomes 60-40. He wonders if this sounds too much like extortion. There is probably a way for Lyre to directly import Allay from the West, but without his permission it is impossible. He remarks that the division is too generous, and that perhaps the woman who will become Janat's mistress is too impressive. She calmly replies that her proposal is beneficial to both Janat and Lyre. Kale feels a slight tension, but he doesn't want to back down. He agrees, setting a condition. Arsel asks what. He says they'll be there for all the deals involving Allay. She clarifies what he means, and he agrees. If this is his desire, he thinks she could use the communications artifact to unlock the island's secret. He needs to keep the situation under control, but in fact, something else worries him more. He can't take his eyes off Arsel. She reminds that Allay needs to be delivered next quarter. Then, unexpectedly, he dips his finger in red ink and puts his fingerprint on the document. She asks him to put his stamp on it too. He's surprised, but smiles. Her actions are unpredictable. He signs and hands the document over to her. Arsel thanks him and asks if he can make one more suggestion. He becomes wary, expecting a new deal. But she only asks for permission to invite Rosetta to the castle. He understands that the sister's story has touched her, and he allows it, even though Rosetta will have to stay late due to business. Arsel says it's important to her that the sisters are together. Kale replies that personnel matters, other than the knights, will soon be under her authority. She thanks him and leaves, wishing him rest. He is left slightly confused, not understanding what just happened. After some time, Arsel uses the communication artifact. Medea is glad that she finally made contact. Arsel asks how she's doing. Medea replies that everything is fine thanks to her care. She assumes that the conversation will be about spice. Arsel confirms and notices that Kale is watching her closely. He pretends to study the documents, but he is clearly listening. Arsel says she is ready to provide 20 boxes. It's more difficult because of the already booked parties. She regrets that she can't send more so that all the mages can enjoy Allay. Medea is grateful even for such a volume. In fact, there are more than 100 boxes in the warehouse, but their task is to create a sense of scarcity. Kale smiles, noticing how easily she tells half-truths. Arsel reminds that the previous price was 2,000 gold per box. But now the price is higher due to express delivery. Medea replies that price is not the main problem. It turns out that rumors have already reached the first and third departments. Some even sent letters to Janat. Arsel understands that everything is going according to the novella's script. She asks Kale if any letters have arrived. He replies that they probably have. This means the letters have already arrived at the mainland mansion. Arsel notices how quickly she gets used to his short answers. Medea apologizes for the interruption and returns to the conversation. She asks if it is possible to sell all 20 boxes to the second department only. Arsel specifies, exclusively to them. Medea promises to buy everything at a higher price if there are requests from others. Arsel pretends to be puzzled, noting that it would be almost a monopoly. Kale realizes that her expression during the deal does not at all resemble genuine surprise. He had seen her truly confused many times. She looked like a rabbit then. Arsel asks him what's wrong. Medea insists that this product can save the lives of the magicians of the second department. Arsel clarifies the price limit. Medea says she'll discuss it and contact him later. The connection is interrupted, and Arsel calmly says that now the first and third departments will begin to bargain among themselves. Kale notes that the mages have more than enough money, but you can't exactly call them fools. If they come to an agreement, they can lower the price below what they expected. Arsel agrees. Mages really aren't fools. But if pride could be sold for gold, they wouldn't spare a coin. And soon he would see it for himself. After a while, they are already sitting at the table, and the maid announces the main dish of the evening. Today it's a fish steak, which will be served soon. Arsel thanks her. Kale reports that a response has come from the Tower of the Mages. They couldn't reach an agreement. The first department offered 3,300 gold, the second 5,700, and the third 3,900 per box. Arsel mentally approves of this arrangement, and Kale only sighs with a slight smile. She says it makes sense to sell to the second department first. He replies that the deal is hers, so the decision is hers. Arsel orders 20 boxes to be sent to the second department and a rumor to be spread among the clients of the Eastern Sea. But he clarifies that the high price for the mages is a secret. The maid nods. Kale adds that once word gets around, the price of Allay will inevitably skyrocket and profits will more than double. Arsel reminds us of the contract. It confirms that Lyre's house will receive 60% of the profits for 6 months. She suddenly sighs and admits that she even feels a little sorry that their marriage would be so short. Kale drops his glass. Arsel asks if everything is okay. He asks if she's only sorry because she won't be able to earn income from Allay. She replies that the business is only just beginning to grow. Kale realizes that he was mistaken and says that the profits can continue to be divided afterward. Arsel asks if he is proposing a trade agreement between Janat and Lyre. He explains that even after the divorce, he is ready to send part of the profits to Lyre because the deal is her merit. Without her, none of this would have happened. Arsel smiles and thanks him. But she notices that he is too close again and wonders if it is on purpose. She says they will have to meet at least twice a quarter to discuss prices. Kale corrects that it was 4 times. He is a little embarrassed, but Arcel is surprised and agrees if he insists. He's worried that she might find it strange, but he still wants her to think about him at least sometimes. He takes a piece of food, and he realizes that the taste seems terrible. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, the maids whisper to each other, noticing their good mood. They whisper that after the wedding, the two will become even closer. One admits that at first she doubted her new owner, but now it is clear that they truly love each other. Another notes that the captain has noticeably changed in recent days, and he recalls how the lady masterfully dealt with the sea chart. Someone adds that Rosetta will soon return to the island at the request of her future owner. The head maid smiles and says she hopes for a quick wedding. Later, Kale calls her to him. He announces that from now on, all transactions regarding Allay will be handled by Arcel. Everything related to the spice comes under her control, and Chiata must help in everything. The maid is silent for a moment, and he asks, "What is the matter?" She replies that the atmosphere in the castle has become softer. Kale clutches the papers and says that this is natural, the owner will appear soon. The maid smiles and notices his embarrassment. She jokes about whether spring has come to his heart. He ponders his feelings. About her awkward smile and the moment when their lips almost touched. About how she pretended to be strong, but trembled when he took her hand. And he understands that it all started at their first meeting. He blushes, remembering this. Meanwhile, Arcel opens the closet. Inside were mountains of gold coins. The deal went off without a hitch. The first payment is equal to the annual income of the Lyre house. She decides not to send the money for now and to keep it here. Then he puts his hand on the map and thinks it's time to take the next step. She calls Chiata and asks him to tell the Duke that she wants to see him. The maid promises to clarify the schedule and carefully asks about the purpose of the meeting. Arcel replies that he wants to talk to the master, and that is enough. Chiata understands and goes to convey the request. Soon, Arcel is already walking with the Duke in the garden. He asks if she plans to make a deal before the impending disaster. She confirms. He smiles, remembering how she was urgently called to him. And he thinks that she comes to him only with dangerous secrets. He asks what disaster we are talking about. Arcel says a tsunami is about to hit the east coast. She wants to build a breakwater on the lands of Lyre and proposes to do the same on the coast of Janat. He is surprised and asks if she knows the length of their coastline, since it is a huge expense for Lyre. She confidently replies that she knows. He remains silent, amazed by her self-confidence, and says that the offer is tempting. But he asks if she is doing this out of concern for his lands or for profit. She explains that the breakwater will protect the property if a tsunami hits. In exchange, she asks for permission to buy the Tinta forest. He is surprised, because the forest is called the native land of poisons. The land there is poisoned, the place is considered useless and unprofitable. Arcel smiles and says that he wants to manage it personally. In a few years, the forest will become a sensation, covered in a toxic fog capable of plunging everything around into eternal sleep. And later they will find golden sands there, a real jackpot. Kale notes that building a breakwater will require enormous resources. And if there is no tsunami, it will be useless. He calculates the expenses and realizes that they are enormous. He asks her why she needs this forest. She replies that she wants to study magical plants. He suggests it's for the sake of Mikuel the magician's future. She agrees. And he adds that he dreams of building a house there for himself and his brother. Kale sighs heavily and agrees to the contract with a condition. The construction must be secret. Otherwise, rumors would spread. The coastal families would make a fuss, and her uncle might do the same. He asks if she wants this. She understands that she doesn't. The thought of passing information to the enemy makes her boil. Kale says that such information cannot be given to the enemy. Then he invites me to sit down. He also has something to say. Approaching the bench, he stops her and takes out a handkerchief. He carefully spreads it out and invites you to sit down. She thanks him, remembering how impeccable his manners are. He asks if she knows how many people are hunting her in the Eastern Sea. She's surprised. He asks how many people have their eye on her, and he hands over a stack of letters. She takes them and is amazed at the number of invitations. He says he decided to deliver them personally, and he suggests reading slowly. Most of the letters are harmless, but one is from Count Arpad. Arpad's house is adjacent to the estate of Viscount Par, and at the funeral, they were the first to show their fangs. In the letter, Arpad addresses the most beautiful lady on the East Coast, and he expresses his condolences on the loss of the Lyre house, recalling his friendship with Countess Lyre. In the letter, the Countess invites her and Mikuel to a small reception to brighten their loneliness. Kale asks if she plans to go. Arcel replies that she has an invitation, but she hasn't decided yet. He notices that Count Arpad's son is just looking for a bride. Arcel confirms that even at the funeral, the Countess discussed his future wedding, although her opinion didn't matter to anyone at the time. Besides, young Master Arpad was known for his womanizing, and Arcel was glad she chose Kale. Kale smiles and says that he knows in advance what the atmosphere will be like at that reception. He asks if there's a better groom than him. Arcel replies that he's beyond competition. Then he says he needs to send a reply quickly. She's surprised. Kale asks if she is against it and touches the letter in her hands. Shouldn't we respond to this provocation and show it to everyone? That there's no better suitor for her on the entire East Coast. He thinks this is the best move. Then those who have their eye on her will quickly disappear. Arcel agrees, but adds, that won't go to the reception, because there will be families there who have already shown their fangs at the funeral. Kale says he won't let her fall into the trap and calls it a wise decision. Instead, they'll invite them to Janat for the wedding. Arcel can already picture it. Kale adds that he wanted to say something else. He reports that in a month, Ella will set out on a campaign to Anna. This means he won't be able to manage Lyre's affairs. Kale suggests appointing another knight, but Arcel refuses. Let Sir Ella finish his business before the expedition, and then we can enlist the aid of a knight from House Lyre. Kale wonders if Janat's help is really unnecessary. Arcel replies that he will soon be able to use another person, so there is no need to redistribute people. She knows that Lyre's true guardian will soon emerge, a devoted ally with exceptional swordsmanship. His name is Khan. He never showed himself after the Lyre's siblings were plunged into eternal sleep. With his help, she will be able to restore Lyre's home. Kale agrees, but wonders who she trusts so much in a place full of enemies. After some time, aristocrats read newspapers. A woman asks her husband if it's true that Lady Lyre is building a breakwater. He wonders if she's gone mad. His wife is perplexed as to why a girl who has never even been to the beach would be so worried about the coastline. Arcel also reads the newspaper and understands that the rumors have leaked out. She asks the maid for more tea and notices that no one is talking about the construction of Janat. And that's enough. Let them make noise. The main thing is that Janat and Lyre will be safe in the coming disaster. Suddenly the maid hears a strange sound outside the window. She opens it, and something instantly flies inside. The woman screams. Arcel catches the paper airplane and smiles. It's a letter from Mikuel. She notes that he is improving at delivering letters. In the letter, he asks how she is doing, and reminds her that it was her birthday recently. He is sad that they have not celebrated together for several years, and he is trying to finish the academy as quickly as possible. Temil has an early release system. He writes that although no one has succeeded yet, he will try. Arcel notices a note on the back. He sent her a portrait of himself and wrote that he misses her. She was surprised at how much he had grown up. Meanwhile, Mikuel is walking through the academy and is approached by the magic professor TR. He offers to become his personal student. Mikuel apologizes and reminds him of his intention to graduate early. The professor says that's why he didn't want to raise the issue. He hands over the letter, and Mikuel literally glows with joy, thanks him, and runs away. The professor is left alone and wonders if it was really that same Mikuel. In his reply, Arcel asks how he is doing and jokes about the golden airplane. She writes that she saw his portrait and is glad to see how he has grown, although she regrets that he is not nearby. She will be overjoyed if he graduates early, but if not, it's okay. The main thing is that he is happy. She reminds that she plans to marry the Duke at the age of 20, and that their marriage will end when he graduates from the academy. If he graduates before the wedding, she might not have to get married. Mikuel almost screams, deciding that he must graduate immediately, but sees that it is a joke. At the end, she writes that she will write to him again later. He asked her what she would do after the divorce, and she replied that she had no intention of getting married again, unless it's for a man who will bring stability into her life. Mikuel clutches the letter and angrily wonders who this man is. Meanwhile, Arcel stands on the deck of the ship and squints from the sun. Some say she shouldn't have gone outside. Kale notes that the journey will be long, but Arcel replies that, as the one responsible for the cargo, she cannot stand aside. The ship takes Allay to the Tower of Magicians, and she needs to get used to the sea. As long as she is Janat's mistress, she must not look like a stranger. Mikuel may want to graduate early, but it will take years, so she'll have to get used to it. Kale asks if this means that once she returns to the mainland, she will never set foot on deck again. She replies that on the mainland there is no wind that makes the heart flutter. He asks her if she likes the sea breeze. She says she does. He thinks about the smell of raw fish and red liquid, which is sometimes unbearable. Suddenly the ship tilts sharply. Arcel tries to catch the hat, but it flies into the ocean. Kale grabs her and hugs her. She opens her eyes and realizes how close he is. He says everything is fine, but the ship rocks again. A monster emerges from the water. The knights prepare to attack. Kale orders Chris to sort this out. He nods. He takes Arcel into the cabin because it is dangerous outside. Inside, he asks her if she was very scared. She admits that she was a little. He says that monsters don't usually appear here. She reminds him that many were recently destroyed near Anna, but he replies that they are multiplying again. Arcel feels uneasy and realizes that he doesn't want Janat's people to get hurt. She says that if the monsters increase in number, Janat will have to send ships more often. He agrees. He recalls the agreement with the imperial family. The Janat became the guardians of the Eastern Sea, but they never received support from the Empire. And if one day a decree is issued to destroy the pirates, he does not know who will have to be put into eternal sleep, himself or the Emperor. Arcel is amazed at how calmly he speaks about it. Chris comes into the cabin and reports that everything is finished. Kale puts her hat on and leads her out onto the deck. He orders Anna to be examined upon his return. Chris agrees. Arcel thinks. Chris says Anna's currents are abnormal and conventional methods won't work. Kale orders that people from the mainland be used as sea guests and sent to Anna. Arcel understands that sea guests do not return. She looks at the sea and thinks that both it and Kale are merciless, but she's surprised at how she managed to adapt while remaining herself. Soon they arrive at the Mage's tower. At the table, they are informed about a letter from the imperial family. Arcel is surprised, but Kale calmly says that it has arrived. The letter mentions the name of Arcel de Liar, the eldest daughter of Lohan de Liar. Due to her coming of age and experience in managing territories, she is officially recognized as the head of House Liar. Arcel smiles. She's officially recognized. Kale says that now they can finally get married. She agrees. He notes that the wedding was postponed because of the imperial family, although he understands that she was also the reason. The ceremony would take place on the mainland, and he had no intention of giving the slightest chance to a pack of hungry wolves. The maid asks the master what he thinks of the idea of building a new castle on the mainland and what its scale should be. Kale replies that it must be at least twice the size of an ordinary noble mansion. Arcel just smiles and says that he is looking forward to their wedding. The Duke replies that this pleases him and promises to prepare everything perfectly. Soon the young lady's wedding dress is already being sewn and preparations are in full swing. A little while later, the knights report that everything is ready for the ceremony. Kale walks towards his bride with a smile. Arcel notices that the sea is calm today, but he objects. She says it's much rougher than the day she first went to sea. She's surprised. He adds that the invitations should have already reached their recipients. And, as she wanted, they were sent to those families who invited her to a reception. Arcel thanks him, then mentions Von de Par and says that he continued to write even after being rejected. In his letters, he complained that he had missed her in Lyre, hinted at rumors about Janat, and advised her to find a more suitable match. Moreover, his wife was even planning to host a reception for her. Arcel tears the letter into pieces. She understands that the reception that everyone has been waiting for will still take place. Only she'll be the center of attention now. Kale notes that on the mainland, such letters are usually burned. Arcel replies that since they are at sea, it makes no difference. Kale says there's a big day ahead, but he's already dissatisfied. She doesn't understand what he's talking about. He asks if she is so busy with guests that she has forgotten about her husband, who craves her attention, and he even adds that perhaps he should take their heads off to make her look at him. Arcel hears that frightening lightness in his words again. She says that soon they will really become husband and wife. And although the islanders insisted that the island did not like strangers, she fell in love with it. She came here for a deal and had no time to be afraid. All this time she was just trying to change the ending of the story. And to make Mikuel, who was squeezing her hand, happy. The happy ending is still a long way off, but they have already taken a step towards it. And this time they will definitely be happy together. Soon Arcel is preparing for the ceremony in a separate room. The maid reports that Mikuel has not arrived yet. The time for the bride's appearance is announced. Arcel asks about the carriage from Tamia, but they tell her that she is still not here. She recalls that at the ceremony, someone from the family must lead the bride to the groom, and he thinks about what to do for those who have no one. She eventually decides that it is just an arranged marriage. And all this fuss made her feel stupid. She gathers her courage and approaches the door. She asks to open it and states that she will go out alone. The aristocrats whisper, wondering why the bride is unaccompanied. Someone mentions her younger brother. Arcel convinces herself she can handle it. Kale comes to her, and she doesn't understand why. He extends his hand and invites her to walk with him. She accepts it. Suddenly someone's hand pushes him away. It's Mikuel. He kisses his sister's hand and apologizes for being late. Kale coldly remarks that the latecomer has finally arrived. Mikuel takes his place next to her, and Arcel thanks him. He remembers her letters about the future house and forest area, about the library, about a quiet life together. Arcel asks him to go. Mikuel is thinking about divorce, and that Kale is not going to let her go. They head towards the altar. Among the guests, one man is angry. He bribed the people in the Lyre house, even the knights, and he was sure that in just a little while the land would be in his hands. He doesn't understand why Janat is marrying Arcel. He feels like this is a marriage of pity. A servant comes up to him and says that they are looking for him. He wonders who exactly. The priest asks the guests to bless the union and wishes them fair winds. They exchange rings, and a request for a vow kiss is made. Arcel is surprised, but Kale says that after the kiss they will become spouses. He pulls her closer and whispers that she needs to show everyone that there is no chance. Arcel closes his eyes, accepting the inevitable. Kale takes off her veil. First, he kisses her on the forehead and cheek. Then he looks at her again, and he kisses her for real. Arcel feels as if they are overwhelmed with emotion. He glances at Mikuel and smirks. Later, Arcel runs up to his brother. She hugs him and tells him how much she missed him. They hadn't seen each other for 3 years. She is surprised at how much he has grown, and he says that she has become even more beautiful. Arcel dismisses the idea that she hasn't changed at all. She asks how long they let him go for. He replies that only until tomorrow. She sighs and wishes him a speedy release. He promises to complete his studies as quickly as possible. She asks if it's difficult to graduate early. He admits that one professor only gave him a B+. This professor offered to become his student, but Mikuel refused. Arcel believes that this was a chance, because talent and a teacher are a powerful force. But he says it's more important to be with her. Arcel is touched and calls him her best brother. Kael apologizes for interrupting them, but there are many guests. Arcel asks for forgiveness because they haven't seen each other for a long time. She promises to return soon. Mikuel gives Kael a hard look. He asks if he's taking too many liberties. Kael replies that he only kissed his wife. Mikuel reminds them that they will still get divorced. But Kael says that until then, they have to be a couple. He adds that he too understands the seriousness of marriage. After all, they are now officially married. Arcel suggests greeting the guests together. Kael agrees and calls her. They go to meet the guests. Later, Kael walks down the hallway and sighs. He remembers Mikuel's words and how Arcel left immediately after the banquet. He stops at her door, and he wonders how she will react if he comes in. Meanwhile, Arcel decides that upon returning to Lyre, he will begin by creating his own knightly squad to ensure the safety of the merchants on his lands. Arcel says that this is how she intends to raise the House of Lyre from its knees, and that is why she came to the Duke. She notices that she is doing almost all the talking, and asks if Kael has anything to add. But he remains silent. He starts mentally counting the decorations on her dress, and she asks if he really has nothing at all to say. Kael looks at her and wonders how she can be so carefree. He is even afraid to drink, so as not to lose control, but Arcel is already taking another glass. This is a wine for sea dwellers, too strong for a man from the mainland. He is going to warn her, but she only says that since he is silent, she will speak again. Arcel reminds that after the divorce, she will no longer be Duchess of Janat and will not be able to use the eastern trade route. But he hopes that the Janat pirates will not attack the Lyre ships. It will be hard for her if familiar faces take up arms against her knights. Kael clenches his fist. Is that really how she thinks about him? He believes that among all the ships of the Eastern Sea, he will choose Lyre, and that after the deal they would become strangers. He approaches her and unexpectedly touches her hand. Then he finally takes her hand in his. Arcel is surprised, and he himself is embarrassed. She asks why he looks like that. But she feels sleepy, and the glass slips from her fingers. Kael catches him. Arcel apologizes, saying he suddenly felt sleepy, and asks how to quickly come to his senses. He replies that he knows a way, but is afraid of scaring her. She smiles and asks if she looks timid. He approaches and asks if she has come to her senses. She only looks at him. Then he says it's worth repeating. Arcel remarks that if he remembers this tomorrow. He interrupts and asks what will happen if he remembers, and asks to remember everything. He lays her down on the bed and hovers over her. He kisses her, lifts the hem of her dress, but suddenly stops. He buries his face in her shoulder and wishes her goodnight. He admits that if he goes any further, he's afraid of disappointing her. Arcel falls asleep. In the morning, she wakes up with a splitting headache and asks for water. It's clearly a hangover. She remembers drinking wine and notices Kael nearby. Memories come back, and she blushes, wondering if she's given away her plans. Luckily, she didn't say a word about the gold mine in the Tinta Forest, and the forest would still need to be taken away after the divorce. But then she remembers how he asked her to remember everything, and she blushes. She wonders if it was a dream, but she realizes the kiss was real. Perhaps he was drunk too. The wedding looked like a performance. The guests were especially interested in the first wedding night, and a mountain of gifts was left at the door. Arcel looks at his calm face and thinks how he knows how to make the heart flutter. She whispers that she likes him, then worries that he heard. He decides to keep a cool head until the divorce. Otherwise, he might accidentally reveal the secret about the mine. When she leaves, Kael puts his hand to his forehead and sighs heavily. Meanwhile, the aristocrats are discussing how passionate the newlyweds are. They say they couldn't take their eyes off each other during the ceremony. Arcel holds a letter from Mikuel. He writes that he was glad to see her, but has already left and hopes to graduate soon. Arcel regrets not saying goodbye. She decides to write to him immediately. There's a knock at the door. The maid comes in and asks if the ship owner had a good rest. Arcel is surprised by the new treatment, and they explain to her that she is now the mistress of the ship and the house. The maid adds that she heard that everything went well last night. Arcel gets embarrassed and sharply asks to fulfill one request. Bring a list of all the people of House Lyre, from knights to servants. The maid quickly brings the list compiled back on the mainland. Arcel is surprised by the speed. She finds Khan's name on the list and makes a note. Then he orders that an order to dismiss all servants be conveyed to the Lyre household, except for one person. At this time, Kale receives a list of mages for mana research. He chooses those whose disappearance will not cause a stir. See guests. The knight suggests Professor Tiara, the most talented one. Kale refuses. It's too risky. It's better to find someone less noticeable, although it would be useful to meet Tiara. Reports of monsters in new places come in, and Kale remembers Arcel's fear. They ask him what's troubling him. He recalls her words about being happy last night. Wonders if she was sincere. And I could look at him like that, without wine. He suddenly asks the knight about his first kiss. He becomes embarrassed and says that he doesn't dare discuss such things. Kale wonders if it's normal to be so nervous after a kiss. The knight admits he's never kissed anyone. Kale is disappointed. Meanwhile, Arcel confirms the order to fire everyone except Khan. The maid is amazed. She asks for clarification of the positions on the list. Arcel understands that without servants, the house will remain empty, but spies cannot be left. She married to protect Lyre's rights and restore the house's strength. Now she just smiles mysteriously. He asks to carry out the order first, and then he will find new people. Approaching the window, she realizes that there is enough time. The main thing is Khan, and the future mine in the Tinta Forest. She was counting on gold after the tsunami, so she built a breakwater. But, looking at the calendar, he realizes that the tsunami did not happen. In Lyre's house, the servants are discussing the fact that their mistress is still not there. They think she's naive, and are going to let her guard down. They say she's just a 20-year-old simpleton, and perhaps she came to pay the overdue wages. A knight enters the room, and they become wary. They think that maybe Arcel will come back after all. The knight announces the order of Mistress Lyre. All knights and servants are dismissed except Khan. He reads out the names and origins, suggesting that they leave the mansion today. He himself is surprised at how the lady knows who is whose spy. In the garden, Kale asks Arcel if she likes the flowers. He offers to pick a bouquet to decorate the room. She shyly declines. She says she enjoys watching them with him. He jokes that you can imagine it as a date. He mentions a rumor that she fired everyone except Khan. Arcel confirms that Khan will become the captain of the Lyre Knights. Kale understands that she knew about the bribery of servants and about specific families. But the tsunami didn't happen, and he wonders where she gets her information from. He comes closer and asks directly. She reminds him that he is figuring everything out himself, but he admits that he has reached a dead end. He says that she is not at all the same as she was before the funeral, as if there was a different person in front of him. And he thinks how strange it is to see her, always confident, suddenly confused under the weight of her own feelings. Kale says that's all, he couldn't go any further and still doesn't understand what caused such a drastic change in her. Arcel calmly replies, "It's like this." He adds that he'll dig deeper anyway. Arcel realizes he'll never know the truth, and an absurd thought flashes through her mind about how to explain that she woke up inside the novel she'd read, in the body of the main character. Kale asks if she really thinks he won't get to the bottom of it. And if she allows it, he will reveal as much of his fiancé's secret as he can. Arcel smiles and says it's pointless, since she hasn't confided this secret to anyone. He clarifies, even to his brother, and she nods. Kale realizes that even Mikuel knows nothing. Arcel says no one will reveal her secret, but he confidently replies that he can. She wonders where he gets so much self-confidence from, and he declares that she knows the truth, and one day she will tell everything herself. Arcel replies that this is clearly not the kind of secret you share with someone you are planning to divorce. She feels uneasy and decides to change the subject, saying that if Khan is appointed captain of the night squad, there will be no more spies left in the Lyre residence. Kale asks if Khan is truly that remarkable. Arcel admits he's not perfect yet, but he's the only person she trusts. Kale thinks she trusts some Khan more than him. Arcel adds that he wants to say something else. She suddenly confesses that she loves Kale and will remind him of it every day. If he's working hard for their marriage, she'll work hard too. Kale replied that he understood, but inside he felt as if he'd lost his balance. She asked if he was very surprised, and he said a little, looking at her coldly. Meanwhile, one of the captain's assistants notices a ship at sea and offers to profit from it. His comrade perks up, boredom having already driven him to despair, and orders the ship to be turned around. The mate is glad to no longer have to keep an eye on Lyre's home in the southern waters. They hand him a map, and he thinks that now, instead of surveillance, he has to watch the monsters. Duke Janat retained the title of Guardian of the Eastern Sea because the monsters plunged at least 10 people into eternal sleep every year. Most often, the knights of Janat who hunted monsters perished, and pirates remained the main scourge. They robbed and disappeared into the western outskirts, making it almost impossible to drive them out. The assistant recalls that if they do not fight back against the monsters, the consequences will be dire, and asks if they received an order from the emperor. Suddenly he hears a noise, and thinks that shelling has begun, but he sees fireworks. The people on the ship are drunk and seem to be asking to be eaten. One of the pirates asks Mr. Lee Ji-an what to do. He pats Yuri on the head and tells him to head for the revelers, promising a fun catch. Soon the sword is pointed at the last survivor, begging for mercy. The loot is good, but the boredom remains. Someone suggests going down to the cabin because they want to see him there. Lee Ji-an grumbles that it would be easier to smash the intruder's head in, but still decides to take a look. A red-haired man is waiting for him in the cabin, asking if they are pirates of the Eastern Sea. Lee Ji-an replies that there are hundreds of pirates, and there's no point in equating them all. The stranger becomes visibly nervous. The assistant introduces himself as Paisian and hears that this name is known as the most ferocious in these waters. He coldly asks about the matter, and the man offers a deal. Passion demands to speak faster, there is little time, and he asks for a meeting with their leader. Lee Ji-an considers him crazy, but hears an offer of support with money and weapons. He grins, realizing that there is a condition, and suggests discussing this in the next life. The stranger hastens to add that all that is needed is to rob one ship. And this is the ship of the Janat family. Paisian learns that the client is Viscount Parr and extracts this confession with difficulty. He understands that it is Uncle Arcel, and that this is a serious matter, because attacking Janat alone is madness. The Duke orders a check to see if these are really the Viscount's men, and find out who is behind it, as well as which families have recently visited it. The assistant agrees to start an investigation, but there is a knock at the door of the office. It's Arcel, and she's asking if she can come in. Kale replies that he is free, and the knight leaves with a smile. Kale jokes that they could discuss everything in the bedroom and invites her to sit down. Arcel says that he wants to invite one person to the villa, from Lyre's house. This is the same Khan she will appoint as captain of the knights. Kale remarks that even if he forbids it, she will still do it her way. She asks the reason for his doubts, and he understands that it is jealousy. He approaches and admits that he would like her to spend her nights only with him. Arcel replies that guests are not invited at night and will invite Khan in the morning. Kale realizes she hasn't grasped the hidden meaning, but she agrees. Arcel notices that there was something serious in his report. He thinks that what's happening between them is more important now, and asks if she's worried about him. She replies that, of course, they are married after all. He comes closer and says that only she can calm his worries. She promises to help. He asks her to do something for him, and she agrees if it will calm him down. In the evening they are sitting on the bed, and Arcel admits that she did not expect such a request. He touches her hand, remembering their night after the wedding, when everything seemed real. In his thoughts, he wants to kiss her again, and does not want to share her attention even with Khan. He is surprised by her consent, and she asks him to wait for her in the bedroom. Later he drinks wine, and she notices that he does it too quickly. He replies that he is not so easily intoxicated, and she offers to share her doubts. He realizes that he didn't expect such a turn of events after the hint about the wedding night. She says that talking makes her feel better. And he realizes that he simply desires her. He wonders how she will react to his directness, but decides to get closer gradually. Instead of confessing, he talks about asking the pirates to rob Janat. Arcel asks to pour her some and asks for details. He talks about supporting them with money and magicians in exchange for attacking their ship. He is worried that the client may harm Janat's family. Arcel notes that since the target is Janat, the customer is definitely from the nobility. She suggests using the situation as an opportunity. If the mages are sent in support, let them investigate Anna. She understands that talented magicians will be sent anyway, and the island has no one of its own. But he wonders if they will fall into eternal sleep, and says that then the plan will have to be changed. Kale pushes her glass away and says her idea is good, then throws her onto the bed. He says that it would not be a sin for those who plan to attack Janat to have their limbs cut off and thrown into Anna. This will be their punishment. Arcel smiles and says she's happy to help. She closes her eyes, and he whispers that this is also punishment for not understanding his feelings. He blows out the candles, says goodnight, and leaves, remembering her smile. In the corridor, he is stopped by the head maid and a young man. Kale is surprised to recognize him as Mikuel. He wonders why he came. Earlier at the academy, Professor Tiar again offered to become Mikuel's apprentice. Mikuel noticed the B+ and realized it was revenge for the rejection. He was determined to return to his sister and refused again. But the professor stopped him and suggested that he do the research outside the academy. This gave credit for all the practicals, and the offer looked profitable. Tiar mentioned that Mikuel was from the Eastern lands and said that Janat was looking for a mage. Mikuel immediately agreed. Soon he is already swimming towards the island, remembering childhood voyages with his parents. He clenches his fists, thinking about how everything has changed. Hearing a whisper, he creates a magical butterfly to eavesdrop. He learns that they want to serve him as a sea guest. The pirates call him the brother of the ship owner, and he is surprised by his sister's new title. Hearing the name Tiara, he understands that his arrival will come as a surprise even to the Duke. He smiles, dreaming of seeing Arcel soon, but the ship tilts sharply. People are screaming about a monster, but Mikuel feels waves of mana. He points in the direction, and the pirates say that Anna is there. He understands that this is precisely why they were looking for a magician. Suddenly, a huge wave rises, and someone shouts about a tsunami. Mikuel lifts the ship into the air, letting the wave pass by, and orders them to continue listening to him. Mikuel asks which way Janat's mansion is. Kale, looking at him, suddenly asks what the hell he's doing here. The young man replies that he heard the Duke is looking for a mage to explore the sea area. Anna, I think. Kale coldly says that he doesn't understand how he knew about Anna, but there is no need for him, and it doesn't concern him, so it's better to go back. The blonde counters that the professor spoke of the need for a mage for Anna's ongoing research. And that sounds serious. He asks if the Duke can cope without help. Kale is sarcastic. Is the guy really so eager to stay? After all, he didn't even really attend his sister's wedding. Mikuel clenches his fists and declares that this is precisely why he wants to stay, to make sure that after his release, the Duke actually divorces Arcel. Kale reminds her that he's already made it clear he doesn't intend to do that. Mikuel replies that if he wants to fall into eternal sleep, he can continue to persist, as his sister certainly wouldn't want to be a widow. He even smiles, adding that she is unlikely to shed a tear at the Duke's funeral. Then Mikuel says that his sister missed him madly, and if Kale loves her, he should think only about her happiness. The Duke sighs heavily, and thinks that right now he wants to cut off this boy's head. The next morning, Arcel asks if the tsunami really happened, and if everything is okay. The maid replies that, thanks to the high breakwater, the damage was minimal, but those who were outside it could no longer be helped. Arcel recalls that in the book, a tsunami destroyed the entire coastline, houses were washed away into the sea, and many people fell into an eternal sleep. At the same time, the nobles then only blamed Kale, saying that the guardian of the Eastern Sea was not able to prevent the disaster. Now she understands that this time they won't be able to bare their teeth, and she is glad that the damage is minimal, although she is worried about Kale's reaction. The maid adds that the residents of the feud are already praising the wisdom of the Janat family. Arcel smiles, realizing she saved many lives, and Janat will now shoulder the costs of the Tinta Forest. If we clear it out in time and take the gold mine, Lyre will never be in need again. She orders that the victims be given maximum attention. Arcel looks at the bed and remembers that she fell asleep next to Kale, but it looks like he didn't stay there. She asks where he is, trying to hide her concern. The maid looks away and says that the Duke is greeting a guest and dealing with the aftermath of the tsunami. Arcel understands that he doesn't remember how she appeared before him yesterday, but first, they need to discuss business. She heads to the office, opens the door, and runs into Mikuel. Soon, the three of them are sitting at the table. Arcel asks if he's come to explore Anna. Mikuel confirms with a smile. Kale gloomily drinks his tea. Arcel recalls the Duke's words about sea guests and sending magicians to Anna. She's terrified that they'll do the same to Mikuel. Kale says that plan is off, and grabs the boy by the clothes. He sharply asks how it is possible to send his wife's beloved brother to Anna as a sea guest. Mikuel is angry, but replies that he agreed for his sister's sake. Arcel mentally notes that this looks like a real fight. She breathes a sigh of relief and asks Kale if it is dangerous to reveal Janat's secrets to Mikuel. The Duke replies that he has no choice, but he is obliged to keep his mouth shut. He remembers warning Mikuel that he could only stay on condition of silence, otherwise Arcel would see his brother's lifeless body. Mikuel thinks he's not so simple as to fall into eternal sleep. Arcel places his hand on his. She asks to keep everything concerning the duchy a secret. Mikuel promises sheepishly, and Arcel thanks him. Kale reports that the breakwater withstood the tsunami and the area is safe. Arcel is happy, and he admits that he is curious about how she found out everything. He understands that it is almost impossible to unravel her secret, but he still wants to get to the truth. Kale adds that the Tinta Forest was purchased in Lyre's name, and Janat will pay for its management. Mikuel checks to see if this is the poisonous forest. Arcel confirms and says that this will be an excellent site for research, although he thinks of it as a gold mine. Kale reports that Khan, a candidate for captain of the nightly squad, has arrived. Arcel jumps up, saying that he can't meet him like this, and hurries to change. The remaining two exchange silent glances. Mikuel asks if the Duke will come out, but he replies that this is his villa. He adds that Lyre's affairs now concern Janat as well. Mikuel exclaims that after his release, everything will change. Arcel returns and asks if they have been waiting for him for too long. The guys are embarrassed, and she invites the knight to come in. Khan introduces himself as a knight of House Lyre. He is surprised by the presence of Duke Janat. Kale examines him carefully. He notices that Khan does not bow to anyone except his master, and this speaks volumes about his character. The Duke rises and says that he will leave them. Arcel nods, and Mikuel smiles reservedly. His look seems to say that it is time for the Duke to leave. Kale comes out and immediately gives orders to Shiada. He orders information to be gathered about the Tinta Forest and Lyre's goods, and also find out more about the family itself. Meanwhile, Khan asks if they really want to make him captain. He doubts whether he is worthy of such a position. Krarshal explains that he doesn't require immediate results, but asks that preparations be started and talented people be recruited. She mentions his acquaintances from the academy. He especially singles out Dane, which surprises Khan. He warns that Dane can be harsh at times, but Arsel asks to bring him anyway. She needs his family's information guild. Khan is surprised, but she is sure that their situation has deteriorated only due to a lack of funds. She explains that Janat's strength lay not only in her army, but also in her information. Lyre does not have such a structure. In the original story, Dane led a guild on the brink of collapse. But with financial support, the future can change. Khan agrees, although he admits he knows little about the Eastern Sea. Arsel says that now Lyre will not be dependent on sea routes. She needs people from the center of the country who can rebuild the county. Khan says he has no doubt in her abilities. Arsel understands that he intends to revive the family and the guild. He mentions the funding issue, but she tells him not to worry. Details will be discussed in Lyre. Khan bows and prepares to leave. Arsel adds that Lyre must become equal to the families of the center. She needs loyal people. Khan drops to one knee and promises to carry out the order. Arsel understands that his disappearance in the bad ending would be a waste. She invites Mikuel to have breakfast, but he asks for a couple of minutes and goes out into the corridor. There he creates a magical bird. He understands that the Information Guild is a powerful tool. It can be used both for good and as a dangerous poison. If Arsel is to remain clean, someone else will do the dirty work. He returns to his sister. In response to her question, he only smiles and says that it's a secret. Later, the maid reports to Kale about Viscount Parr's connections. At the wedding, he interacted with Duke Dihas. Then there were secret meetings. There is evidence of his access to Dijes's villa. Kale clarifies which wedding he is talking about. He understands that Dihas is trying to overtake Janat, and he thinks that this would not have happened during his father's lifetime. He orders Pajan to accept support and keep a close eye on Dikafalda's actions, especially considering that Viscount Parr is Arcel's uncle. Meanwhile, Mikuel is already on the ship and turns to his sister. He asks if she said they were going to Janat Island.